Hi, everyone. Welcome to 10x deployments, AI deployments and growing, how the Jets are advancing the ball for an AI forward future. We are so excited to have you here. And before we dive in, a couple of quick housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded, so you'll receive the replay afterwards. If you have any questions for Bar and Ewow, please drop them into the Q&A box at any time, and we will definitely leave some time at the end to get through as many as we can. So let's get to our starting lineup. First up is our guest, Ewow Fusilo, the inaugural Chief Data and Analytics Officer for the New York Jets, where he leads the organization's data, AI, and machine learning strategy across both football and business operations. He oversees a multidisciplinary team of data scientists, application developers, and business analysts, and serves as a strategic advisor to the club's executive leadership. He brings more than 2 decades of leadership experience transforming data and analytics into competitive advantage at iconic organizations. He previously established the NFL's first data and analytics function for fan engagement, sponsorship, and media, and held chief data and analytics officer roles at General Motors and PepsiCo. A frequent keynote speaker at industry conferences and academic institutions, including the Snowflake Summit, Columbia Business School, and Princeton University, Fusilo has also testified at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce AI Commission's first public hearing. He holds a BSc in Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering from Princeton and an MBA from Columbia Business School. And hosting today's conversation is Bar Moses, the CEO, co-founder, and fearless leader of Monte Carlo, the agent trust platform. Under Bar's leadership, Monte Carlo has empowered the world's most innovative organizations to accelerate their AI transformation from piloting human-guided agents to deploying fully autonomous operations at enterprise scale. The company is backed by leading Silicon Valley investors, including Excel, GGV Capital, Iconic Growth, and Redpoint Ventures, and she has been named a top 25 AI executive. So welcome, Ewow and Bar. And with that, I will hand it over to Bar to kick us off.
Amazing. Thank you for the introduction, Jamie. Great to be here. And wow, thank you so much for joining me on. I sort of consider you, a friend, a two-time Monte Carlo customer, and a great thought leader. Someone who's sort of bold and decisive. And I think, there's a lot of challenges to take on today in the world. And I'm really excited for you to share your story and your journey. So thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Amazing. So I think we'll start with a quick introduction, tell you a little bit of context for folks, share a little bit of context and background for folks who are on the line with us today, and then we'll jump into discussion. So the topic for today is really agent trust. How do we define trust for agents and for AI products? We sort of define that as having the confidence that your AI agents are behaving correctly, reliably, and consistently in production, and your ability to demonstrate that. On the next slide, we've actually shared a little bit of what we've seen in terms of research that we've done. And so we've actually surveyed hundreds of data and AI leaders, and we've been able to learn or glean some very interesting insights. The overall trend is that every single organization is building agents. However, very few are actually scaling agents reliably in production. I'm really excited to hear from you all later today as one of the very few organizations that are in that state. Everyone wants to be there, but very few are actually there. More precisely, about half have agents that are in production today, a little less than half. More than 60% mentioned that they are deploying faster than their teams are ready to support. I sort of see that often, is that the technology and our ability to move is faster than people's ability to accept, sort of creates an interesting tension. And about half sort of expect themselves to significantly rebuild or re-architect the systems that they've deployed. For me, that speaks to the experimental mode that folks are in, trying out a lot of pilots and a lot of new technologies, but still unclear in terms of what's actually going to stick and how do we really scale this in production. We have a take on that at Monte Carlo. And so on the next slide, I'll sort of present, what we sort of view as the top barriers to doing that. And, I have the great fortune of speaking with hundreds of leaders on a weekly basis. And I consistently hear that the top barrier to realizing value from AI agents is actually the ability to trust them. So a lot of folks are sort of really kind of, on the left-hand side, building various use cases for AI. Those can be conversational analytics or agentic experiences for AI. And a lot of folks are sort of on the hook to deliver what's on the right-hand side, ROI from those. But there is this sort of trust gap in the middle that's actually slowing us down and stopping us from really, potentially moving as fast as we can. And so at Monte Carlo, we've developed sort of a framework for how to address this trust gap, which has been built on sort of our experience in this field. And we really believe that in order to sort of think comprehensively about agent trust, we need to take a systems view for that. And we need to take a view that's really supporting these use cases in production. And so, sort of lay out these four layers. The first layer is really the context layer. Agents oftentimes don't work in silo, they work using data and context to make decisions and to power those experiences. And so oftentimes that data is wrong or inaccurate and late. And so sort of the foundational data quality or data reliability, if you will, which we've all known, for the last couple of decades, becomes paramount here for the first layer. So that's kind of the context layer. But that often is not sufficient. And so we started looking at other layers. The second layer here is the performance of these agents. Sometimes an agent might take 4 or 5 minutes to provide a response to a user. I don't know about you all, but I'm not going to wait 4 minutes for a response to a user. And so it might as well have been returned nothing, right? And so oftentimes, actually, the performance of an agent, the latency or an error can really sort of hurt the trust that an end user has in an agent. The third layer is really around the behavior of agents. So, I always sort of laugh that dashboards have been wrong for a very long time, but agents are wrong confidently, right? They will sort of shout confidently, but wrong answers in your face. And so that might happen because, they made the wrong decision, or sort of, chose the wrong tool to work with. And so the third layer is really about deeply understanding the behavior that agents make, the decisions that they make, and the reasoning to make sure that it's accurate. And then finally, the fourth layer, one, two, and three could be perfect, but the output of the agent can still be inaccurate. It could be, sort of as simple as a hallucination, even though that happens a lot less, but it could be a lot more refined. It could be, a user that's left frustrated because the answer is just not helpful. It could be an answer that's not quite inaccurate if the agent isn't grounded in the right metrics and the right queries. And so really it's important to kind of think about all these layers and make sure that you have strong coverage of those. I think I have one last slide here. Perfect. Okay. And with that, that's a little bit of sort of how we think about agent trust. I'm really excited to talk about all these topics and more at the New York Jets. And so I'll hand it over to Wow to give us a little bit of the background of what does the business of AI and data look at the New York Jets? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Bar. And I love the confidently wrong answers from the agent, right? We have all seen that. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Uh, and by way of introductions, as I think about our story together, Bar, one of the things that uh, may be helpful, even just as a setup to this slide, is what does being the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at a franchise like the New York Jets, what does that actually mean? Well, it's something that we've been exploring because today I am the only Chief Data and Analytics Officer across any of the 32 teams. That really speaks to how the Jets are advancing the ball, like the title of this webinar. Our CDAO office, if you will, really contains three key components. Jamie talked a lot about them, Bar. One is I do span both football analytics and business analytics. That in and of itself is very unique because there are no other clubs where both functions report into the same function. Second, my remit includes application development, and that was designed to ensure that any analytics we develop, we can seamlessly deploy to both our football and business internal partners. And then third, of course, we're here to talk about AI. So AI strategy and deployment, of course, are part of our CDAO office, but the differentiator is that the AI bar was actually set by our ownership. So Woody Johnson is our owner, and he has set forth a vision for us that says we at the Jets will create the best AI decision support infrastructure in all of sports. No pressure, by the way. So
Wow.
no playbooks to copy, right? No peer CDAOs to call. And so together, I feel, and I love this Monte Carlo story so far, together, I think we're writing the playbook together. And so our history, Bar, as you know, it actually predates my joining the Jets earlier this year. We were among the first cohort in the NFL alongside the Chargers, the Rams, and the Raiders to onboard, which is pretty amazing. And so our Monte Carlo data observability back in 2024 is now an integral part of our business data foundation. And when I arrived, what a pleasant surprise. It felt a lot like our PepsiCo days together. So, so that was great. But as you have reframed your company's perspective and orientation, I reframe things as well on the business side here. And data engineering, while it is a super established function, it's not a hygiene project. It is exactly as you said, it is a trust layer that underlies every part of our AI program here. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. And so that's on the business side. On the football side, we had to work a little harder because we had to parallel track our data foundation build and our AI program. And again, no pressure. I joined the Jets about 8 weeks before the 2026 draft. Oh my goodness, no pressure. So we had to build these things in parallel. And ironically, AI coding agents were the key for us. And whether it was Microsoft, we are a Microsoft shop, so whether it was our Microsoft partner products, Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, we have used them all. They all have helped us accelerate. And really, in a mere 8 weeks, we built the data foundation we needed. I would say, Bar, today, we might even be able to build it faster because of the quality of the tools, and our folks are far more adept at things. Uh, Jamie, why don't we go to the next page? Because here we can talk about our operating model. And so this is our three horizon operating model. Horizon one is AI fluency. As I said earlier, Bar, we are a Microsoft shop, so Copilot is our tool of choice for our entire front office. Front office refers to all of our non-player staff. And we're at 97% adoption of Copilot. My advice for the group that's on this webinar, and it's the same advice that I give to every sports team I talk to, don't skip Horizon One. Horizon One is so important because it's actually the people using AI in their daily work who are the ones best equipped to understand what are the highest return use cases for Horizon Two. So what is Horizon 2? And this is actually an older slide. There are two components to Horizon 2. One is workflow automation. And we literally just evolved this articulation this week. Workflow automation is absolutely critical. We're delivering deep double-digit productivity gains here, and you can see we have 40 plus applications, AI applications and deployments in place. What I actually find far more exciting, and I just gave our executive team here an update this week, is actually innovation. And so Horizon 2, we're going to be rebranding to innovation and workflow. Innovation refers to use cases and deployments that we could not even have imagined pre-AI. All right, and we're going to talk about many of those examples today. Horizon 3 is what we like to call the hybrid workforce, meaning teams of humans plus AI agents out of the gate delivering 2 to 3 to sometimes even 4x in productivity gains. Software engineering, data science modeling, that's currently where we're deploying this. And we are trying to engineer towards 20 to 30x. And Jamie, let's go to the next slide to round things out. This gives a bit of a sense of our evolution here. And so at the end of the first quarter, we measured how many AI deployments of the like that I described to you before in Horizon 2 and 3. How many do we have? And where are they organizationally? And you can see we had 7 AI deployments. We're quite proud of all of them at the end of Q1. This scorecard, believe it or not, it's a couple weeks old and it's already dated because we're at 51, not 47. We're at 51, which is more than a sevenfold increase in about 3 months. You can see we're across every one of our major business and football functions. I want to also be precise for this audience. Bar knows this. We have a bit of a different nomenclature. We call these deployments for a reason. So the 51 deployments are a combination of autonomous agents, AI models, and AI-built applications. Agentic share, however, is growing quickly. But I just want to be, clear that we have a bit of an expansive definition here. So at 7 on the left-hand side, I could personally and did personally review everything. At 51 and climbing, it's myself and my direct reports who are reviewing everything. When 51 becomes 100, becomes 200, becomes 300, Bar, that's when I need you because we need an observability platform. Uh, so yeah, so that is our Jets story. Would love to talk a little bit more about it, Bar. So I'll hand things back to you.
Fantastic. So we'll turn to our fireside chat portion now. And Yuval, thank you so much for sharing that background. Again, super impressive story. Maybe just I'll call out 2 things that I really like. The first was, you mentioned don't skip the first horizon. Really sort of, make sure that your workforce is really working with AI themselves. It's very hard to dream, if you will, or even understand what the use cases should be built without doing that. That's sort of I think um, not necessarily intuitive, not obvious takeaway. And then the second thing that I love on your last slide was really the sheer pace and development of velocity. 7x in just a few months, having these sort of in production. I think the most interesting part is this is the slowest that we are ever going to be. From here on out, by definition, the models are going to get better, technology is going to be, so we can expect the our speed to increase from here, which is we think this is impressive. I can't wait to see what you're going to do in the next 3 months, right? So love this background. Thank you so much for kind of setting the stage here. I think very helpful. I have some questions that we kind of talked about in advance. So let's start with those. And then for the audience, feel free to drop in questions as we go. We'll try to answer them as we can. So let's start by sort of diving into agent trust. And one of the things that you sort of mentioned is that the Jets ownership has sort of charged the organization with building the best AI decision infrastructure in sports, which I love the ambition. But also, as you said, there's no playbook. You can't call a peer, sports CDAIO and ask them what it's like. You know, in that situation, when sort of the bar is sort of set by ownership and not by IT, what does trust sort of have to mean for your data and AI? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and perhaps I can bring it to life for you and the group here. You think about the draft, and we have our AI putting certain types of information in front of, let's say, our general manager. Or you think about a multi-million-dollar sponsorship and that being up for renewal, and we need decision support information. from an AI agent that's going to our sponsorship team, it has to be correct and there cannot be any caveats. And it really has two dimensions. One, as you had talked about in your layers, it's data. Are the inputs, in fact, fresh, complete, and correct? And we need all three. It's not a menu where we choose. And then there's the agent trust. I love the way that you described the behavior of the agent. We certify every agent. Is the agent behaving in the way that we certified it? And exactly as you said, because we are charged with building the best AI decision support infrastructure in sports, this isn't a nice to have. It's not a compliance checkbox. It is a precondition to everything that we do. And as such, we can't rely on hope. Hope is not a particularly good strategy. Partnering with your company and your team, well, yeah, that's a great part of the strategy. Because it really it gives us the types of tools that we need to understand the underlying data, the behavior of our models, the quality of our outputs. Uh, Now, where we can go even beyond that, because we are prototyping with your team, which has been just amazing. Um, Perhaps, and we haven't made any decisions on this, but perhaps we have a registry. One of the things that we're in the land of 51, myself and my direct reports, we can be the ones who connect the dots to say there are multiple use cases for the same AI model. But why not have a registry that enables far more visibility to the organization and also to find out what are those top performing deployments and get those out there. So we like the idea of maximizing reusability. So hope that helps.
Yeah, that does. Super helpful. And great to kick off with that question. I think we are getting, a bunch of audience questions. So I'll choose one of those here. You
Sure.
sort of mentioned that you've gone from sort of 7 deployments to 47 in two quarters, but what is it, and but so the question here is like, what do these actually do for
Sure.
the Jets?
Yeah.
And so maybe you can sort of pick two or three, maybe the more
Yeah.
autonomous ones, and tell us,
Yes.
what are they doing? What decisions did the agents make, and what data are they running on?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that question. I often get a little too deep, and I realize I'm not explaining and bringing to life what it is that we're doing. So yeah, let me give three examples. One, we are certainly in the business of many things. One would be selling tickets to our games. And so we have a terrific, terrific group of people who sell our tickets. They're selling tickets via the phone, et cetera, et cetera. So we stood up an AI sales coach. Our AI sales coach analyzes all of our ticket sales calls. So this would be hundreds and hundreds of thousands annually with essentially a what I like to call a call type aware scoring rubric, right? And it's a rubric that was designed by our sales managers and adheres to our JET standards. What are the outputs? Well, there are actually two. One would be a team-wide set of insights for every Monday morning meeting for that sales team. And then really a rep level coaching that's really happening at scale. And what's significant here is that, with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of calls that happen every year, no human manager could ever possibly deliver this, right? And so that's one that we're particularly proud of. Another one, and I know we have Jared and Megan from our communications team, and this is one that they stood up themselves, actually. So we do have a federated deployment model, and that is our daily news and social media agent, fully autonomous, publishes a comprehensive media intelligence report to all of our Jets executives every morning. And why is that important? Well, we need the headlines, we need the stories, we need the sentiment in the hands of our executives well before any type of hype cycle. And this is a great example of what I was saying before, the reusability, because those reports we in fact house in a central repository for our marketing AI agents to mine and identify moments that matter for their programs, their campaigns, right, around, let's say, a draft pick or a free agency trade or something else. And the last example that I would give, which is a really fun one, it was uh, perhaps a panic moment in my early days here, as I was probably about 3 weeks away from the NFL Combine. But we had come to realize that our head of medical and his team were spending about 4 weeks analyzing all of the unstructured medical dictation transcripts that come from Combine, right? It's hundreds of players, thousands of pages. I'm spending 4 weeks analyzing those. Well, you know what? Large language models happen to be very good at analyzing unstructured data. So we built a terrific agent that took that 4 weeks of staff work down to 2 days. And the common thread, I would say, across all of these deployments is you can see that every deployment has a named owner, right? I name the owner in each case. There are performance metrics that are very clear and very established in each deployment. And to what you were saying earlier, there's a defined autonomy level. So, as an example, do we allow full autonomy or do we have some level of human in the loop? And so we prescribe that in each deployment.
Love it. I love the moment of panic was resulted in an agent. That's so great. Um, let's talk more about, I think the journey to scale is very interesting to folks. And so,
Hmm.
as you've gone from 7 to 47, probably going to continue to grow that. You sort of
Hmm.
mentioned at the beginning, you reviewed everything, then you got more humans to review everything. Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit more about what broke at those stages and
Mhm.
what is replacing the manual oversight as you're sort of continuing to scale this?
Yeah, that's a really good one, Bar, and I suspect many in this webinar may have faced the same thing. Quality is what broke first for us, and what's interesting is it often broke without announcing that it broke. It broke silently. And what I mean by that
Mm,
is when we have in the early days humans very integrated in the loop, in fact, quality was strong, right? The complaints we often got were more around execution, deployment. You had talked about speed and latency. But as we got to more and more AI agents, that's when, oh, wait a second, there's a data pipeline that wasn't refreshed. There was a data scheme somewhere that didn't work well. So our deployment workflow could be different from others, but our deployment workflow, and sorry, I have automatic lights here, so I'm just going to reestablish. But our deployment workflow requires every deployment to start and remain as a prompt for a period of time. It might be days, it might be weeks, in rare cases, it'll be months. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that there is a stable process from which we can deploy an agent. Uh, and it's not to say that's a bulletproof way of going about things, but we have seen even in the first dozen iterations of a prompt that there's meaningful drift in the output, or there are data quality issues that we actually hadn't experienced before, or data access. Data access is often, the hidden and silent fault, right? Now, let's say we're in the post-agent deployment realm, right? We can still get this silent drift, right? And so that's where I loved when you said at the beginning in your opening remarks, an agent can be confidently wrong. Yeah, that is what happens, right? We have all experienced hey, let me challenge the agent. That doesn't quite look right. And then the agent comes back very politely. Oh, I didn't really mean that. I just made it up. Well, that's not so good. And so these are so important, right? In that agent program operating at scale. So We have actually not cracked the code completely here, which is why we have embedded humans in the loop, and the vast majority of our 51 deployments are actually not agentic. They still require humans because we're still early days.
Yeah, that makes sense. So to build on that, there's a great
Yeah,
audience question
yeah,
on one of the use cases and how do you ensure quality. I also think
yes.
there's a fun exercise that I think Kate is getting started on. The first thing that broke when I scaled agents was sort of fill the blanks. I think you will fill the blank with quality. If folks want to chime in, feel free. Um, and so the follow-up question, wow, is
Sure.
the social media agent that sort of goes to
Yes.
executives. You mentioned it's fully autonomous. It gets sent to the executives every morning. How did you
Yeah.
ensure the quality of that? Is
Mm.
that sort of is there a human in the loop there? How do you
Yes.
think about quality? I think people are especially nervous about things that get sent directly to executives or directly to customers. What are your thoughts
Yes.
on that particular use case?
Yeah, that particular one did require a human in the loop in a big way during the development. And to your point, it still requires human in the loop. So while it is an autonomous agent, Jared and Megan do review the output before it goes to the executive team. We don't see much in the way of drift, but that doesn't yet give us the confidence. I do think we will be in a position soon enough where we can do some more of the automated checks. The other trick that we find, and Jared and Megan do this all the time, is have a second LLM check the output, have a third one check the second one. And so we do that to help minimize, right? So if there's a 1% error factor in LLM number one, and there's a 1% in the second. Well, guess what? It's 0.1% multiplicatively. So, yeah, those are some of the tips and tricks. But yeah, depending upon the output, uh, we will still have the human in the loop.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great deep dive. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about what the environment looks like. What's the sort of
Yeah.
AI platform that you're
Hmm.
working through. I think it's particularly
Yeah.
interesting given, there's both sort of the league central data team and then there's sort of 32 different clubs. And
Hmm.
so what does sort of the day-to-day on the AI side look like for the Jets, and what sort of part of
Hmm.
kind of the centralized league platform?
Yes, yes. So the league, to your point, provides incredible operating leverage to us. And in fact, all of the 32 teams, they have a central data and services arm. They have a league-wide deal with your company, giving each club access to all of the tools, both on AI trust and data observability. And there are shared league-wide data products that get fed daily to our CRM. And so that, to me, is the power of standardization and federation. On top of the league footprint, we do have our own estate, our own footprint. As I said earlier, we are a Microsoft shop. Copilot is org-wide. We do, however, also subscribe to all of the usual suspects in terms of AI tools, right? The Anthropics, the OpenAI, et cetera. Our overall data platform, it's Azure Databricks. Data transformation as code, as we like to call it, is dbt. We have some homegrown applications, Titan, which was the original name of the Jets way back when, so we call our application Titan for our in-house coaching and scouting applications. So there are a handful of named components, if you will. It's really on top of that bar that our AI fleet, our 51 AI deployment fleet, it sits on top. And it's really this this combined infrastructure, number one, and number two, that we are unified across football and business. It gives us a force multiplier, meaning one data foundation, one AI platform, one set of guardrails, there's a multiplicative return on every dollar investment we make in our infrastructure. So yeah, so hopefully that helps paint the picture.
Yeah, that's perfect. And maybe let's talk about sort of, your particular, point of time when you sort of arrived. There was already
Yeah.
sort of a strong Jets business
Yes.
data foundation, right?
Yeah.
There's sort of this tie into the league's, sort of gridiron
Hmm.
fan data platform. And
Hmm.
there was this sort of rapid build that was needed all at the same time. Did that make the
Mm.
discussion around AI agent trust harder? Did that feel like you were slowing people down? Did it feel like
Mm. Okay.
what
Yeah.
challenges did that sort of introduce, given you sort of came mid-flight, if you will?
I did come mid-flight. It's a really good question, and thinking out loud here a bit, I'm beginning to think it helped. And so
Hmm.
it could have been a barrier. I like the question. I think because we were midstream and the awareness both on football and business was so high around the importance of data foundation, it in fact helped in our AI trust discussion, meaning
Hmm.
we could go out to the organization or both organizations with oh, you remember, we have our gridiron, we have our own Azure Databricks stack. We have our league-wide standards. We have gridiron tie-ins. We have Monte Carlo leverage. All top of mind. Hey, we're just building on top of that when it comes to our AI deployments. And then in the case of football, we were able to parallel track to say, well, we need to do both, and here's how we will do that. And so I think it actually helped the journey of gaining trust. Uh, I would say the other thing I did, which is more of an anecdotal thing here. So I'm sitting in our Jets facility here. This is our training facility, and we have a cafeteria. Actually, we have two cafeterias. I deliberately sat at a different table in the cafeteria every day. And because I wanted to have very meaningful conversations with each of our business teams, each of our football administration teams around around the data foundation, and then, of course, around what AI is and what it could be, what it could unlock. And I felt those more informal over lunch conversations were in fact more powerful than the formal workshops. And we did run many, many workshops here. But I felt the informal, hey, let's just toss things around a little bit, would help. We also have executive team meetings. We actually had one this week where I typically provide an AI update to all of the Jets executives, here allowing each executive to hear the types of applications, the types of deployments that we're going after. And it is usually right after those executive team meetings that I get a flood of notes from the VP plus population here. Hey, I didn't realize we could do XYZ. Can you help me do something similar, right? And so those are all the types of things that I think may have helped, Bar. I like the question. I'm feeling as though perhaps it was a helping hand.
That's awesome. Not obvious, and takes a positive outlook on life to see that as something that has helped you. That's awesome. And well, just a follow-up question on that. I think something that a lot of you sort of mentioned earlier today, kind of this distinction between data and agents, and what does the meaning of data engineering and agent
Hmm.
engineering, if you will, or AI engineering.
Hmm.
I think you have an interesting take on this. So I'm curious, like, do you
Hmm.
find data trust and agent trust as two connected problems or parallel ones or sequential ones? Like, what is your take on that? I ask because I think a lot of folks are
Hmm.
asking themselves, how do I tackle both at the same time, one after the other? Are they two disparate problems? What's your take?
That is a really good take on what we have seen firsthand here, and everyone's journey will be different. I believe that they're essentially the same problem. And I go back to your four-layer cake at the beginning. because they're in effect amplifying each other, right? So the agents will amplify whatever data quality you feed them, right? And then the data quality will amplify the effectiveness of the agent. And we do very much subscribe to more of the loop engineering philosophy that says, well, the more we're able to do our reps, if you will, not sales reps, but
Hmm.
model reps, we are better off, right? And so if we're managing a parallel but disconnected set of ecosystems around data and agent, we're probably not doing things the right way here at the Jets. That could work, by the way, for other organizations, but I think we're so integrally tied that we think about those as, in effect, the same problem and the same opportunity. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, it definitely does to me, and I think for how we think about the world. As you mentioned, it might not work
Yeah.
for every single organization, but yeah, I mean, I think the sometimes agents can be wrong because of something in the agents, and sometimes because of the data. And like you said, agents are not going to let you know when things go wrong, and so being able to identify
Yeah.
what happened and why. And like you said, you oftentimes need agents to actually identify that. So I think that's a good observation on your end that, it's actually one interconnected problem.
Yeah, one of the things, Bar, to build on that, that we discovered early on, more on the football side than business, but it could happen on either side of our building here, is as we saw that the outputs had gone silently wrong,
Uh-huh.
confidently but silently wrong, we would often use AI to interrogate and diagnose.
Huh.
And so, pick your tool. We might deploy Copilot, we might deploy Claude, and we would say, well, what is happening here? Because we had a stable set of outputs supporting a very important business or football process, and now it's gone astray. And we have found the art of discovery. The other piece, as I go back to that sales AI coach, there's also data discovery that we can use our AI agents to help us out. As an example, we our data engineering teams knew exactly where to find the last 30 days of call transcripts. They were having a tough time going further back. We have a third-party vendor that houses these files for us. They're not in our facility here, right? And so we said, you know what? We could have our data engineering team spend the next 5 months trying to find, all of the data that's hidden, or we could have an agent go find it, and they'll probably find it in the next few minutes if we deploy the agent correctly. So that's why I'm saying they're very connected and in fact part of the same opportunity.
Yeah, amazing. I love that you said part of the same opportunity. You have such a positive outlook on life. It's inspiring. Where most people might say tech debt or
Yeah.
organizational issues, you see the opportunity, which is, I love that because you're right. Like we are in such a fortunate, moment in history, moment in time. The opportunities for building with AI and data is just
Yeah.
massive. And so,
Yeah.
how fortunate we are to be building at this point of time. So one more question for you. This is actually Michael asked, and also this
Yeah.
was going to be my next question. So I feel like Michael is reading my mind at this point. Um, for organizations that are beginning to implement agents, the
Hmm.
gist of the question is, how do you decide when an agent acts on its own versus keeping a
Yeah.
human in the loop? Like, is there sort of a rule of thumb, or
Mhm.
how do you think about that? And is it at the agent level or is it at the workflow level? Like, is there a part of the agent that should remain human owned? And is there like a framework or rule of thumb that you use to kind of define initial autonomy and then expand from there?
Yes, yes, we do have a fairly well built out blueprint for AI deployment. And it's a bit of what we were talking about earlier, Bar and Michael, that we do insist for our builders here in the facility, and I follow my own guidance, that we start with what I like to call prompt engineering. And what is that all about? It's, I think we've all seen the literature on it, but for us, it's a multi-part check, and it's not a checklist, it's a requirement that says when we're building that one-time prompt, no matter how innocent it may feel, you want to have the multiple components of provide the context. So whether it is the data or the role that you're asking the agent to play, do not assume that the prompt will know, that the LLM will know. It does not. And in fact, by doing that, we're able to reduce by a large order of magnitude hallucinations,
Hmm.
right? And so we call that the context layer. The second is the bias layer, and I myself have often made some big mistakes here, which is we have a tendency to want to be very, very specific in our prompts. And perhaps that's okay, except that when we're specific, we often cause the output to be biased. We get the answer we want, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to an unbiased source of truth. And so there's a bias layer that we use, a number of different rules of thumb around. Certainly a constraint layer. So are there explicit structures that we're looking for in the output? Are there exclusions? Probably, right? And so, be very specific on this. And then the last is evaluation. So this was what you and I were talking about before, Bar, which is how do we have the model check itself, or at a minimum, report back a confidence level with all of the cited sources, right? So the human can actually go and check it out. That sounds like a lot. It is a lot. It's an enormous obligation, right, to set up an AI model, even if it's a one-shot prompt. So we do require that as step one. Step two then is that's great. Um, don't go just directly to an agent. Run your prompt, whether it's each day or each week, and then you act as the human agent. When you run that prompt, you see the output, and you as the human should review it. It's much like we talked about before. We may find that certain data sources that we provided in the context layer, they're not stable. Okay, well, let's not agentify a whole workflow on top of an unstable data platform, right? We need to fix those things first. It may be that the behavior of the prompt is drifting and changing over time. We can fix that. And so we should do those things. And so whether it's days or weeks, in rare cases, months, do that human observation. Then step three is, okay, deploy the agent. And if it is high visibility, high impact output, we would advise that keep the human in the loop, a la the media agent we talked about. And then we actually believe there might be even a fourth level deployment. We're calling it loop engineering. Many are calling it loop engineering, which is we do like, for example, the media agent is a good example. An agent taking on a daily repetitive tasks with all the guardrails. That's great. It's wonderful. It's absolutely amazing. What about agents who can simulate the way in which we work? And they can actually do the loops that we would as humans. So one example I would give is that sales coaching agent. As I said, we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of transcripts to analyze. So would I simply have told uh, Claude in this case, would I have told Claude to analyze all of them and build a coaching and scoring rubric, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah, I could have done that. But probably back to your point on latency, I would not have a very efficient model, right? We might have to wait hours and hours and hours to get a coaching output that would have been useful right now. So instead, I had the loop do two things. One, maximize the discrimination between call types, kind of a k-means clustering, if you will. So this is kind of a simple example, but separate voicemails from short calls from long substantive calls. Those are radically different call types. The coaching, of course, would be different. Once we have that, I still don't want to analyze every single one of the hundreds of thousands of calls. Have the loop identify and iterate, in fact, to get maximum impact with the smallest possible sample size. Why? Because we want minimum latency in that feedback. It's very, very important. But also, why waste the tokens? Why waste the compute? So that is our formula. We'll probably change it over time, Michael and Barr, but it has worked for us so far.
Very comprehensive. I like that. Um, a follow-up on that,
Sure.
I think I don't know if I'm allowed to say this word, but governance is oftentimes still a thing. We could call it governance or we could call it not, but you touch on this a little bit.
Mm,
Um, you're sort of building this in parallel, like you have your guardrails in
yeah.
parallel with the deployment.
Hmm.
You guys are not sort of slowing down to set up all of the um, you know, fo- I wouldn't call it foundations, but you're sort of building in
Yeah.
parallel, right? And I think this is
Mhm.
allowing you to move faster. How do you think about the certification of an agent before it ships?
Mm,
Like, as you're
yes.
expanding beyond the 40 something that you have 51 at this point,
Hmm.
who certifies each agent? And, you mentioned about maybe having a
Yeah.
registry or something like that. Like, how do you
Hmm.
sort of think about the governance of these agents going forward?
Yeah, this is actually, all kidding aside, it is the one that's keeping me up at night right now.
Okay. Tell me
It
more.
is myself. It is Paul Marsh, who's our head of software engineering. It is Sean Clement, who leads football data science here, and Ashley Gooden, who leads business analysis. So it is the four of us who certify every AI deployment, agent or not. And we do require a named owner. We do require metrics, and we track which model is powering which workflow, right? And everything passes through that four-layer evaluation discipline. It is working so far
Mm-hmm.
because we're at 51. I don't think it will work at 100. I know it won't work at 2, 3, 400. And so that is where, um, I think the pilots that we are prototyping with you around AI trust tools, and then this is why I like the idea of a registry, having a model registry, if you will, an AI deployment registry with to some degree of self-certification
Mm-hmm.
could work. The only pause I have there, Bar, is that we, unlike your company, we're not a tech company. And so model registries and self-certification, it's commonplace, right, at a tech company. It is not at a sports team.
Mm.
And so I'm not sure that is the right structure. And we have time, I don't think it'll be tomorrow that we'll need to figure this out. I don't think it's another quarter, though, that we can wait. To
Mm-hmm.
your point, we
Mm-hmm.
are on an exponential rise here. And so that's where working with you, we also have our Microsoft colleagues. We have a company called Presidio who runs many of our infrastructure management projects here. And then I didn't mention this earlier, but next week is an AI sports consultancy that before I joined, our president and our COO had brought on for that Education Horizon One program. We've just shifted their engagement to be more of an advisory, and
Mm.
this governance component is work stream number one. Where do we think? Uh, by the way, probably not looking at other sports teams or sports leagues, right? Because there aren't, as we said before, there aren't a lot of playbooks. But if we looked across, for example, your client base and retail, right? Retail and CPG way ahead, financial services way ahead. What is working in other industries from a governance perspective that we could take a blueprint from? So that's where our heads are at right now. But
Yeah.
This one, it's keeping me up at night
It's
a little bit.
timely. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, maybe two things that I can share from what we're seeing across our most sort of forward-leaning, maybe tech kind of, companies. Maybe two
Yeah.
things. The first is, as you mentioned, how do we think about sort of governance and instilling sort of a trust infrastructure layer at scale
Mm-hmm.
for hundreds of agents? And that's, something that we're partnering on. The next sort of frontier there that we're really seeing is what I would call self-improving agents,
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm.
really you start going into this sort of meta, but it's not only
Mm-hmm.
that the agents are running autonomously, but
Mm-hmm.
the agents that are doing the detection of issues, troubleshooting issues, and fixing of issues runs
Interesting.
autonomously as well. And so, sort of a new kind of product that we were working on at Monte Carlo called reinforcement loop, where we actually
Amazing.
have agents in the wild that are autonomously improving other agents, and it sounds like science fiction, but it's
Wow.
here and now. Which is really exciting. So I do think that that's a big part, seeing that work
Yes.
for
Okay.
organizations is really exciting. So we'll have to talk more about that. I think we have time for only one or two more questions. While I feel like could spend probably a couple more hours on this. But so maybe just one or two questions.
Yeah.
Continuing with this thread on of the future, you really
Yes.
think I've noticed that you sort of run everything through this sort of three horizon framework. You have culture, which
Mhm.
you're huge on, wow, and I have so much respect on that. The people side, is so important. The workflow automation and the AI decision, sorry,
Mhm.
AI as decision architecture. Where
Yes.
does trust infrastructure sit in that model? What happens to sort of
Mhm.
Horizon 3 without it?
I love that question. And in my mind, it does, trust is underneath all three horizons. So as
Mm,
I think about Horizon One, the trust is in fact all of the humans, 97% in fact of our front office are active users of the Copilot tools here. And that's critical. Will people rely even in their day-to-day, in our case, Microsoft Office suite work, rely on the AI? Do I trust AI to take notes for me in my meeting? I
mm,
show up to every single meeting here, and people freaked out about it when I first started doing this. I showed up with nothing but my phone. I do not ta I do have very nice Jet's notebook here. And there's not a single thing written in this notebook because I trust in my day-to-day that I can use Microsoft Copilot and the Teams transcript feature to take notes. And by the way, when I do that, I can now search my notes. How in the world was I searching paper notes and handwritten things, in the past? I'm not even sure how we did that, right? And so trust is really key in that Horizon One. In Horizon 2, what I like in our deployment, again, everybody can be different in their organizations. But as you can tell, we keep humans in the loop for quite some time. We're not so quick to move to the agent. And why is that? It's because of the trust, because trust is so critical in an organization like a sports team, where humans can still inspect with their own eyes. Now, the output is coming out at a rate like they couldn't imagine, so that's great. The productivity is still there. We're not slowing down at all, but it is pretty critical. Horizon 3, it's almost existential because we are with a select set of leaders, both on my team and one other team here. We have certain leaders who are capable of leading a hybrid workforce, people plus AI agents. And the way I like to describe AI agents to those who are outside of our world, Bar, is think about an AI agent like a summer intern on the one hand, in that they don't have any context, so you do have to provide context. You have to help them along throughout. But they are also, from a productivity perspective, like your most seasoned employee. So there's unusual hybrid being almost. And so because they're such an unusual hybrid being, there's a very specific management style that is required. And when we don't have the level of trust, right? And typically the leaders of these hybrid workforces, they're AI native to begin with. And that's why we started with the software engineering team and the data science team. They're AI native to begin with, right? They were using coding agents from way back when. But now we're asking them to do something very different. And there is a level of trust that's required because in Horizon 3, we're often in a multi-agent architecture, and we can't act like Horizon 2, where humans can inspect everything. I'm intrigued with you have the agents who are roaming. That may be the piece we're missing in both Horizon 2 and Horizon 3. That's how we're embedding it throughout our three horizons.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Wow. This was such a great discussion. I think we have dozens more questions that we didn't get to, so we're gonna have to continue this. Jamie, I'll hand it over to you to wrap us up here.
Yes. Thank you both for the amazing discussion. Before we let everyone go, if this got you thinking about where your own AI reliability stands, we would love for you to check out our State of AI Reliability ebook that shares perspectives from data and AI leaders on what it takes to ship trusted AI. And you can scan the QR code to download. And thank you so much for spending time with us today. And a big thank you to Ewow and the Jets for sharing their story. Look out for the recording in your inbox and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank